Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Robert Wasman with JRev Media, and this is the 5th episode of Cannacation, a show that focuses on the normalization of cannabis through education. You can expect me to discuss things like politics, the research, and even the future of cannabis as a whole. Now, I want to take a moment to remind people that I just recently had a contest on our Instagram page on JRev Media, and we hit our mark, but nobody participated in the contest. So we still have the dab rig, the T-shirts, and the stickers to give away. So I want to remind everybody to go over to the Instagram page. Make sure you follow us. We will be posting a new contest here soon because we want to give these away. And then you can stay there. It'll be a whole lot easier than the last contest. So make sure you check that out. JRev Media Instagram. But getting back to the episode, this episode is called How to Set Up a Home Grow. Basically, it's part 2 of our So You Want to Grow Weed episode. In the last episode, we discussed commercial growing, the differences between indoor and outdoor. In this episode, we're going to focus more on growing in your home, what you should do as an individual, how you should grow as an individual, how big should it be, what style of grow should you have. Are you ready to learn and grow along with your plant? I hope so, because in this episode, I'm going to have David Bailey, the editor of Dope Magazine, master grower, and all-around entrepreneur on the show. It's a pre-recorded interview, so you guys are really gonna like it. He talks to us about his experiences with indoor, outdoor, growing small, growing large, and you get to hear him make fun of me, which is always a bonus. So without further delay, I'll go ahead and we'll start the video and get with you guys after we're done. Hey guys, this is Robert Wasman. I'm your friendly neighborhood budtender, and I'm down here with David Bailey from Dope Magazine. What is up, man?
How's it going, bud?
Oh, living the dream. Tell the viewers a little bit about yourself. Your history, you're a grower, you're an entrepreneur, you're an editor at a magazine. How'd you get there?
Yeah, so I guess I started growing back in college when I was in another state, and after leaving there and going to Colorado, started growing in a dispensary and ended up being a pretty big one there. I learned a lot from the head grower there, and obviously did a whole lot of home growing kind of along the way that got me into that position up until that point. Kind of had to adapt and shift a lot of home grows and apartments and ventilation situations and make sure apartment management didn't know, or landlords, whatever that shit. So did a lot of that for a long time, and then yeah, so I kind of moved up from there. Then when I came to Washington, started being the grow writer for Dope Magazine. Was the head grower for a couple different operations, consulted, was the manager for Lucid for a while, the retail stores, and then now the editor at Dope Magazine, and start my own grow license right now. So
awesome, man, that's great. So the reason I wanted to have you for this this interview is because you helped me learn how to grow. You know what I mean? Other people did too, but you were the one that helped me like refine what I'm doing. And in this episode, we're talking, about grows for the consumer, not necessarily the commercial side of the grow. So let's just assume I don't know what I'm doing. What would you suggest to me to start my grow?
Well, I mean, let's just go back to when you didn't know what you were doing. It's been a while, man. You've been growing for a minute now. Golly, I mean, starting out, there's so many different directions. That's the hard thing. So, like, reading and researching seems like a little overwhelming, I think, because there are so many different directions. It's like, oh, do I do hydro? Do I do soil? What type of lighting do I need? That's probably the hardest part. And so, honestly, you just need to pick a route. You just need to choose a direction. I think some of the easiest ways to go are just the most old school method, if you can just do it in soil, because it gives you a little bit of a pH buffer. Also, just with your nutrients, a little bit of buffer to zone there. and then stick with just either sunlight if you can, or your HPS bulbs or whatever.
Okay.
There's a lot of options around LED and all these things, but
so basically, you'd have to pick a route, and I think a lot of that would also depend on like what your budget is. I mean, soil it's more expensive on the long run, but in the short term, it's cheaper. I would say that hydro, is maybe a little bit more cost intensive in the beginning. Yeah. But over time, it tends to pay for itself. So those would be types of things that you would tell the initial grower to think about before they decided which route they were going to go.
I mean, really, I think like it's for the novice grower, for the home grower, it's about your space. It's about what you can work with. I mean, more than anything, that's going to be your limiting factor.
Okay.
So do you have a lot of head space? Like, if you don't have a lot of head space, setting up a hydro operation isn't going to be to your benefit necessarily, because a novice grower will always over veg. Which is okay.
Yeah.
It's a good learning thing to be able to see how it grows and nodes out and everything, but that causes really tall, lanky plants. They're going to take up a lot of fucking space. Everybody does it. It's okay. But dealing with that, like, you don't want to have a hydro system that's 4 foot off the ground. Now you've only got 5 foot of head space, and you've got your fan and your lamp and everything else up above it.
Yeah.
That's a bitch.
Yeah, and then your plants are running into your lights and...
That's a problem, you don't want to deal with it as an early... Because, I mean, even fire is always a realistic hazard, right? I mean, you're trying to burn your fucking house down. It's a really bad way to hydro grow. A really bad way.
So, cost, space, these are things that you would have to take into effect.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's say I'm choosing soil, right? I'm going to go with soil. What nutrients and kind of cycles do you think would be best for someone in a small apartment-sized grow going on soil?
Yeah. I mean, I think for like nutrients, like that's always kind of a personal choice. There certainly is like a fiscal benefit if you're going to doing something with your product, or trying to get the largest amount of yield per square foot with agrochemicals. There's something to be said there. However, I think for the home grower, like, you have the capability to really. I think the best pot is grown in small spaces.
Yeah.
Period. I really do. You have the most control, you have the most ability to tweak every little scenario and pay attention to each individual plant. You can't do that in to the same ability on a large scale. It's just not possible. So because of that, like, nutrient-wise, I think it's nice to use like an organic base if you can. You get a lot sweeter product at the end. You can get comparable yields after time.
Okay, so you're saying that you could go with your normal like store-bought chemical nutrients, what I mean? Or you could go with organics. Now, that's something that you taught me a little bit about. I haven't got into it yet. I was still trying to perfect actually growing the pot first. But you were telling me about like bacteria soups, using simple things like bananas and leftover food, and then fostering certain bacteria. Tell us a little bit about that on a small scale.
Yeah, on a small scale. So I mean, like composting, I guess it kind of all comes back to this mentality of composting. So composting isn't just this single format of like having only X amount of vegetables that you can utilize, and it always has to be aerated and turned. There's also anaerobic composting, so that's going to mean it doesn't utilize oxygen. And so there's a lot of natural ways that happens in our gut, for instance. Lactobacillus is the main bacteria. It's actually the bacteria you primarily use in bokashi composting.
Okay.
So in bokashi composting, you can take actually meats, all the harder, more grainy substances that would typically it would take years potentially, and regular compost go down in weeks or months. I mean, the biggest thing is being able to add meats and all types of rancid things, lime zest, lemon zest, all those things you can't add.
Yeah, they tell you not to put it in normal compost. Yeah.
That's it. You can add all that. So more or less, starting with that as your mentality, learning about that, understanding how those bacteria are functioning, that's the same way that your soil works. And then you have to understand how your plants are actually interacting with those bacteria to pull up nutrients. Because naturally, so like in your yard or whatever, things aren't growing because there are small amounts of like free ammonia floating around, but it's not the primary base, right?
Yeah.
So most things are interacting with soil bacteria, which are breaking down organic substances, and there's another organism that is then transferring that substance that attaches to the rhizosphere, to the root base, more or less, right? It converts that energy into a usable form. And the plants are actually, even to some extent, because they're expressing a need by it transitions the type of bacteria, the pH of these things, that then transitions a need for that nutritional supplement to that area. So the plants can actually more or less kind of call for what they're needing and what they want.
So a symbiotic relationship between the bacteria and the roots of the plant.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Awesome. And you foster that by adding in these, the meats and but you
so that's just bokashi
time,
compost,
right?
Yeah. So this is like in your house. So like that's taking all the scraps.
Okay.
So taking that boom back to the garden. So you have the final matter that actually you're still going to be looking at about 6 months, but that's you're looking at 2 years before you've got a really usable compost that's fully humused.
Yeah.
Whereas like with this, 6 months is really fucking fast. So you can utilize that as in addition to your soil medium. It's going to be a really, really, really rich nutritional addition to your soil blend. But in addition to that, you can actually use the juice that's coming off that, and that goes into your feeding blends. So back to the bacterial teas, you kind of opened up a big can of worms. With the bacterial teas, you're doing aerobic. So you're having an air stone in the bottom of a bucket. What that's doing is it's either making the bacteria dormant or it's killing it off.
Okay.
So a lot of the pathogenic bacteria is going to die in an aerobic environment and or go dormant and not continue to multiply. So it'll just falls off, right? Whereas your beneficial, as its largest thing, beneficial bacteria are going to multiply vastly. So all that's in there typically is going to be a little bit of compost from your bokashi or from worm castings or both ideally.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be brewing that potentially with some molasses. There's a lot of kind of movement away from that even now where you're just doing like fish emulsions or just letting it just sit longer and brewing for just longer periods of time. A lot of different methods there for different reasons, results. You can put yucca in. A lot of different. I mean, it gets. So it's a tricky method.
Why would this be beneficial for the grower? Like, I mean, besides just knowing the information and it being fun, I mean, does this help foster better growth or nug structure or terpenes? I mean, is there anything in particular that would be beneficial for the end result?
Yeah, so I mean, terpenes I think would be a distinct thing. So your terpenes and your flavonoids are going to be substantially higher. Your overall nutritional content of the product, especially if you're using this as an edible or food product, is substantially higher, and that's been demonstrated just in tests of like organic foods versus conventionally grown, which is kind of funny because this is only the past 50 years we've never grown fucking vegetables this way, but conventionally grown agriculture products. I mean, we're looking at results as much as like 100-200% increase in like magnesium and iron, calcium, things like that. Okay. So the same kind of happens in cannabis, and for that same reason, also your antioxidants are substantially higher. So your vitamin C, vitamin A, cannabinoids themselves are antioxidants.
I did not know that. Okay,
anyway, continue. Cannabinoids are some of the most potent antioxidants known to mankind.
Nice.
Yeah. Per weight per gram, they're phenomenal. Each has their own. Different.
Well, that makes sense. It has a lot of protective abilities, processes, and our biggest thing as humans is being oxidized and dying. That is the aging process, is us getting oxidized. But okay, so terpenes, that makes sense that you would find more terpene production in organically natural means than you would in unnatural means. I don't want to say unnatural in the bad name.
Yeah, I just think chemical, I think, is just the easiest way to kind of put it. But yeah, I mean, so the main reason that is the complexity, the variety in which the plant is interacting with things. So you just get a more complex. Often, we have not seen this conclusively, but it's often said by people who consume it that you get a more complex terpene profile. You get a more complex cannabinoid profile. Everything's a little bit more varied, a little bit more intense, if you will, because of the organics. It's definitely a sweeter, tastier flower. If it were for the money, honestly, looking at just economically, I'd be only growing chemically, period. Because you definitely, it's easier. That's for goddamn sure, and it's faster. To some extent, if you've really honed in the ultimate organic game, you can be, I would say, comparable, right? Yeah. But it's not as easily. A novice grower with a fucking chemical nutrient regimen can be getting 1.5 pounds, potentially even 2 pounds of yield, a lamp yield. If we're going by old school kind of home grow, thoughts. Say that because now you would go by grams per foot or grams per meter now, but yeah, I mean, just kind of go back on that old aesthetic. That's kind of what you're aiming for. You know, and you can absolutely get that as a novice grower. Like I remember easily getting 2 pounds of lamp from some of my first grows.
Yeah.
You know, like at home, no problem.
I see what you're saying with going with that route, but it would be easier for the average grower, or especially the new grower, to go the chemical route, at least until they learn the kind of techniques that they want to grow. Now, let's talk about, you know, we have it.
I think maybe the best in-between, honestly, sorry to interrupt you there.
No, go ahead.
I think maybe the best kind of in-between there is actually to go with like your pre-bottled organic, your OMRI certified nutrients. So those are things that are still utilized in growing, like your organic grown vegetables. They've made it a lot simpler for a lot of large-scale farmers, things like that, Botanicare, you know, companies like that. And they're, you know, a pretty quality product. However, it's not truly organic. Like it is
borderline.
It's kind of it's kind of a hybrid situation, but it is organic certified enough that it's mainly organic. I think that's kind of a nice in between to start because you get the simplicity of. And the benefits in many respects, like if you're using Canna or you're using, God, there's so many fucking, like I said, Botanicare, all those different Earth Juice, all those different companies, you know, you're going to get pretty similar yields to one another. And you're going to be able to just follow a recipe. And so you still get to learn the basics of what it means to pay attention to your ppms, which is not really as useful with those particular nutrients. They'll stay pretty low, seemingly. But your pH balance, certainly your nutritional uptake, your daily, like your soil tension, you know, like your light, your growth per day, all of that. Like that's all going to be something you need to learn those basics. You need to harden those basics down, like really solidly before you, I think, dive into trying to figure out the rhizosphere and understanding the basis and the interaction between all these different yeast and bacteria with the soil. I think that's a kind of a safe spot to start, right? Like
understand the ecosystem before you try to understand the micro ecosystem going on inside of it. Yeah, I feel it.
Get the basics done, you know what I mean? Like,
so let's assume, you know, I went soil. I decided to go with the middle ground, you know, where I'm only just like putting in a certain millimeter per gallon into a thing, and I'm kind of following a schedule. So what would you think would be best for the actual technique of growing itself? Would you recommend them topping for their first time grow? Would you recommend them mollypopping, or would just bushing it out? Like, what would you recommend as far as that's concerned?
I mean, I think that like there's again like in your space and like how many plants you have. You know, I think in my early days, like how many clones survived, you know, is a big part of that. So it's like I had planned on having maybe these 9 plants in this space, but I ended up with 4 or something of the sort. Or they ended up males because I'm popping random seeds I got from some random sack. You know, so I mean, like a lot of that it comes from that. Usually you're going to end up with less and you end up with more. So in that respect, I think it's good to veg them out a little longer in the beginning because you're going to make that mistake anyway. So if you have the space, go less plants. It also lowers, you know, you're not someplace where it's legal. Lowers any incidence of or lowers the time you'll be spending at least.
Yeah, at least that.
At least that. You know, keep your numbers low, 1 to 2 plants. You can still get the same amount of weed off that amount of square footage. You have to grow it out a lot longer. That's what I think isn't often realized is that, you know, people talk about like pounds per lamp, pounds per meat or whatever, and they're like, oh, well, how big are you going to your plants? And it's like, well, it's more about like how many plants for how long. So like if I'm only vegging them for 4 weeks, like, well, I mean, if I'm that's actually a pretty good chunk of veg time. If I'm vegging them for 4 weeks, like I'm probably only going to do like 4 plants in a 5x5, say, or 4x4 space, right?
Yeah.
Like, whereas if I'm vegging them for 1 week, I have 9 plants in there. You know, if I'm not vegging them all, I'm taking them right out of clone, and if I can slapping them in there, I may run fucking, a lot, right? 36 or more plants per single lamp.
Yeah, because I myself, we slowly worked our way down from a 12-week cycle to a 10-week cycle to a 9-week cycle. You know, and right now I'm finding the 9-week cycle is the sweet spot for me as a grower.
As on a veg cycle, you mean? Like 9 weeks of veg or 9 weeks?
Total.
So just 1 week of veg?
Well, when we were at 12, we were doing like I think the 3 weeks of veg. Then we took out a week of veg and we dropped ourselves down to 10. You know, and then we took out a week of veg and we dropped ourselves down.
Just smaller plants.
Yeah, and what we realized is like, you know, and this is real world experience here happening. You know, is like we our first harvest. You remember were huge freaking plants. They were ridiculous. Large bushes of
with no weed on them.
With like no weed on them, you know, and we produced maybe like a QP.
Yeah.
Right.
And you had some serious trees. Like it was really humorous to me, like kind of seeing how they came to. I mean, I felt bad, but sometimes like I had to laugh because I'm like, Dude, like each one of those easily could have been half-pound plants.
Yeah.
Easily, 3/4. I mean, if you'd really been pushing them. And like, yeah, you guys get like 1/4 pound off of like fucking like 5 plants.
5 huge plants.
It was crazy.
And but this next go around, same amount of plants.
Yeah.
Right? No taller than this by the time we harvested. You know what I mean? But between the lollipopping and really topping them and getting them out,
they were dicks.
Yeah, they were huge and they were great and they were perfect for what we were trying to achieve.
Yeah.
You know, so I definitely have to agree with you as far as, you know, if you're going to do this, you have to assess what you're able to do in the first place. So
I think less plants is just easier to manage in the beginning, like watering 2 pots versus watering 9 pots.
yeah.
You know, playing with air movement and like even watering and maintaining even like runoff and other things. It's just a lot. It's just more difficult. The more plants you add, it's just more complexity.
Yeah.
Right. So just keep it simple. I think is the best thing to do in the beginning.
So, all right, so going back, let's assume that, you know, I went soil, we're doing the middle organic, I'm only going with like 3 plants. What would you, with like a small number of 3, right, for a 5x5 space, how would you prune those, or how would you train those plants as they grow?
I mean, you're probably looking at, you know, with only 3 plants in a 5x5 space, you're probably looking at a solid, you know, 6 weeks of veg for a beginner, because you're, you know, there are definitely people who can grow it and do it in 4 weeks and pound it out and get that same yield. You know, and there's been strains and times when I've been able to do that. But I would say in the beginning, like, don't count on that. Look at 6 to 8 weeks of veg time. Like, that's not uncommon for larger tree-style plants. And that's what you're kind of going to need to fill them out. I think the best thing to do, I guess, like, I'm trying to think of the terms, like lollipop and all that shit, like, it's more so just pruning to your space, right? So you definitely want an even canopy, period.
Okay.
That's always going to be the case. You're never going to be better off having like a tree, because like you've got these different level, like your lamp loses intensity on an inverse. Period.
Yeah.
Those are just the facts.
Exponentially so, too.
Exponentially. It's on the inverse. That's it. And so like you don't want to do that. Just don't waste your time, don't waste your space with that. If you can canopy, if you can level out your canopy, you're now seeing kind of a standardized, like on the large scale industry, you know, outside of the home, you're seeing very much that standard, right? Like finally, like what I had been doing in Colorado, fucking at this point now, like 5 years ago, is coming around to being done here on like the daily and most
That
of the
sea of green level playing field kind
now,
of
everybody's
thing.
got different sized plants.
Yeah.
You've still got people who've got 8 week veg. You've got people who've got 2 week veg. You've got it all in between, but everybody's recognized that in terms of like the light to canopy ratio, there's fucking facts. Right? Like there's some basic science there.
Yeah.
Like there's no arguments, not nutrients, none of that bullshit. Like the science is the fucking science, and like you're losing money if you're letting that light drop to the floor.
Yeah.
You know.
You're not wrong. And so, okay, so you're saying regardless of how you train the plant, what you're going to want to keep is
It's
an
a
even
flat,
canopy,
canopy.
Across. Good ways to achieve that trellising,
I think
topping,
Yeah.
stuff like that, or even low level stress where you push down on the plant, or do you taught me this thing where you like pinch.
Yeah, you pinch and bend it.
Pinch and bend, so you're not hurting or killing the plant, but you're stressing it out.
That's it. Yeah, it kind of depends on what type of time you're dealing with. I'm both working with plants at home. I think it's useful to go ahead and do low stress training. You understand how the plant grows and responds and bends. More or less, you pinch it so that it breaks apart the minor parts. I can't remember exactly what the minor parts of the cell there, like the stalk.
Okay.
But the softer parts, and you have the harder parts that are still intact. And so what it does is it allows it to bend over. Like you can bend it down without shredding or breaking any of those harder fibers. And so it still stays intact, and it bends out, and then it just curves back up.
Yep.
And then you get a straightened stalk there. It also changes the hormonal flow, though less drastically than cutting it, to the lower branches. So you still get the same lateral branching growth and movement from that. You still get all the benefits, but without the aggressive topping. However, there's something to be said with the aggressive hormonal flow that changes whenever you top.
Yeah.
Whenever you do a solid top on a plant that's just been growing on a single straight, conical root, and you just nick it, especially take off the good 6-inch top, you'll see it turn to the perfect Hanukkah tree, you know what I'm saying, real quick.
Right? That's awesome. So, okay. In our hypothetical, we have about 3 plants in a 5x5 space. We're going with soil, semi-organic. We're using HPS. And we're keeping our level canopy. Harvesting, any tips? You said usually typically 1 to 2 weeks is how long you should flush.
1 to 2 weeks. The biggest thing is just checking the ppms on the runoff. You want to make sure that you're cleaning the plant out, right? Like, I mean, you can't actually strip anything. Plants can utilize the nutrients that are available in there.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is to pull away any extra nutrients so that they can utilize what they already have.
Yeah.
That way you don't get any residual chemical taste in the end. Even from organic nutrients, like too much nitrogen just leaves a grassy flavor. Takes a much longer time to cure.
It's where you get that hay flavor from, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, you know, every flower is going to have a slight amount of kind of grassiness when you first harvest, just because there is a nitrogen release. It's definitely still holding some nitrogen in there. But yeah, it shouldn't smell like fucking hay for like a week or two. That's not good. That's not a good sign at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
The flush is really important, like right towards the end, mainly for the chemical runoff and for the, you know, if you're looking at it as like a medicine. Nitrogen causes problems in eating high nitrogen foods. Okay. For your body, especially if you're on like a ketogenic diet or things like that. If you have like cancer and all those types of things, you don't want to be eating a large amount of nitrogen. And other things that make like fermented foods, it's also not good. It causes it interrupts the process of the yeast. So high nitrogen is not good for us to consume, although obviously it's good for plants. Yeah. So there's a balance there.
You gotta have the plant. The plant needs it, but at the same time, you don't. So
you don't be eating a whole bunch of nitrogen. So there's definitely a balance level there. So then that's part of why you want to flush your plants, especially on the medicinal side. And it's going to make better tasting weed. I mean, at the end of the day, like you gotta smoke it or cook with it or whatever. Like you want it to taste good, you want it to smell good. Like. To be good.
You want, you don't want the old school like smells like hay, tastes like hay.
You just put 2 months worth of effort into this, and Lord knows what amount of money.
Yeah.
Don't fuck it off in the last.
You don't brew your own beer to brew crap.
No.
You don't grow your own weed to grow crap.
That's it.
So okay, so we're flushed, we're good. Like any tips on how to harvest? Like,
totally. I mean, harvesting fucked me so bad in the beginning because there's no. Well, okay, now that there's so much legalization about, there's a lot more books, manuals. I encourage you to look them up. My advice would be to get all your fan leaves off before you do anything with any other part of the plant. Mm-hmm. Even necessarily before you maybe pull off the trellising. The trellising is going to be weaved inside out some of the buds a lot of the time because they've grown there over them. Fan leaves can kind of block that, and you'll end up like tearing some shit up sometimes when you're pulling trellising off, which is, it's not the worst thing. You're about to cut them up anyway.
Yeah.
However, like, you can fuck up a really pretty nug, which isn't cool. That's not what you're trying to do.
Can't take a picture of a broken nug,
no,
man.
it's a lot less flattering. That's for damn sure. So strip all your fan leaves, and then obviously go and take your trellising off. I suggest trellising or some form of something to hold them up. I mean, if you're feeding them right, those fuckers should not be standing up on their own. Yeah, that's just kind of the reality, unless it's outdoor. And even then,
even then, I see people put trellising over the entirety of the plant.
Trellising outdoors as well. I've never had a positive outcome not using it. So, I mean, it is what it is there.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely strip it down. Get all the fan leaves off. If you're going to trim on the branch, then obviously, take off each branch. If you're going to trim by the nug, like I personally prefer to do that and to dry it on nets and stuff. That's been the style that I've just come accustomed to. Mm-hmm. Also largely because I've used like an auto trimmer and then do hand trimming afterwards for the sake of efficiency. So a lot of times that's why I've used that. But I mean, if you're going to do the stem, I definitely make sure that you don't have a lot of buds that are, because the stems may be rigid and outwards like this, right? Like to begin with. But then obviously when you hang it upside down, they're going to dry towards one another, and you don't want to have anything that's going to end up overlapping. So if you've got two big branches, go ahead and snip them and get them in between and hang them separate. Okay.
So you don't want them touching.
You don't want them touching.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Good air circulation. You don't want direct air. Like you don't want a fan blowing on. That's a big mistake a lot of people make, is they fucking just blow a fan right on them. What happens is the outside dries really fast and the inside is really moist.
Okay, so no wind. I've gone through the whole process. I've used my organic. I'm using soil. The 5x5 space. Did my 3. We flushed it for 1 to 2 weeks, and then we've cut it up. We hung it. We did not put direct air on it. Yeah. What else? Like curing wise, what do you think as far as
keeping your room right? These are all things you can find in books, obviously, but I think the biggest thing is checking on it daily. That's where so many people go wrong, or they get too nervous. If you're a weed smoker, if you've at least been smoking for weed for a while, like even if it's like illegally, like you're getting sacks, like what stuff you like. Just like is it the way that you liked your favorite weed? No. If it is yes, then perfect. Like stop there, put it in the jar. Right? Like I think like keeping your humidity in your environment is crucial. A lot of people won't do that. They'll just put a fan on it or some shit. Like, certainly people have been drying fucking weed in barns for centuries. Like, I get it, but like, you know, it's shit quality. So
just because it works doesn't mean it's the best tactic.
So get a dehumidifier, set it at, you know, a lot of people say 60%. Like, I find that to be a little hazardous, especially here in Washington State, because while a machine may be reading that, maybe it's at 65%, and you don't have direct airflow on it. You know, there is potential, especially if you're trying in a basement or, you know, who knows. Like, I say go and drop down to 50. You're not going to completely ruin your weed, but by any extent, dropping it down to 50%, it's not going to just kill the weed. It's still going to be very fragrant, but keep an eye on it. Like, check on it every day. If it's trimmed, sand trimmed, like, rotate it around. If it's hanging on the stem, make sure that it's not touching or landing on anything. Or if it gently is, make sure it's like cotton or breathable, not a plastic or metal or anything like that. Something that's going to be able to, like, at least allow some airflow, and try and rotate it daily or multiple times a day if you can. That's fucking crucial. Like, just keeping an eye on it. And it starts to get really crunchy on the outside, but you can tell that it's not on the inside. Put it in a bag. Brown paper bags are your fucking best friend. Slap it into a brown paper sack for, you know, half a day. It'll soften up again on the outside. It shouldn't be crunchy anymore. That moisture, basically, it's the beginning of curing. It dissipates to the outside. That's it.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for, you know, walking us through this step. Well, for me, this is like the third time you've walked me through this process, but, you know, thanks for doing it for the listeners. Where can people find what you're doing? Where can they find out, you know, your work? Where can they read what you're writing? Where can they do all of that?
Yeah, I work for Joe Magazine's editor, so I definitely have pieces out there regularly. Actually, the October issue, I did a lot of the pieces in there, the main features. Some really exciting material in there. Some ex-NBA player, world champion kickboxers, skydivers, fun stuff coming. So,
nice.
Yeah, check that out, and then eventually you'll get to see some of my weed in the market. But that's it'll be a minute.
That's on the DL.
I have the license, so I mean that part's in the public papers at this point.
You started the race.
I've started the race with all of my limbs tied behind my back. So the dirt tastes mighty. Dirty.
Hey man, but hey, you're gonna make it.
No, it's good. Everything's going along at its own pace, but no, nothing's gone wrong. It's just timeline.
Awesome.
So, yep.
All right, guys, that was David Bailey from Dope Magazine, master grower, entrepreneur, writer. This guy is just one of the ones that you know is going to be a staple in the industry, and you know I am honored to call that man my friend. So now we're going to move on to the news section. First I want to apologize for the last two shows not coming up. I was sick, and so were my children, and so I had to deal with that. But I'm back, and I'm ready to talk some cannabis with you guys. So let's go ahead and move to the news. So the first article I want to talk to you about is from Gene News. This is in regards to the legalization or the carcinogens in dabs. So the article goes on to say, as legalization of marijuana continues to spread among various states in the United States, researchers and physicians are trying to fully grasp the potential health hazards of the recreational use of the drug. And let's be honest, guys, there are some. Since marijuana can be consumed through a variety of methods, eating, smoking, vaporizing, it's important to understand if and how the drug delivery methods affect the users, especially when you're talking about medical cannabis. With that in mind, a recent study from investigators at the Portland State University found benzene and other potentially cancer-causing chemicals in the vapor produced by butane hash oil, a cannabis extract, also known as dabs. The findings from the new study, published recently in the ACS Omega in an article entitled "Toxicant Formation in Dabbing: The Terpene Story." Man, that sounds like a based on true story, a summer blockbuster. Well, anyway, it raises health concerns about dabbing or vaporizing hash oil. a practice that is growing in popularity, especially in states that have legalized medical or recreational marijuana. Dabbing was already controversial. The practice consists of placing a small amount of cannabis extracts, aka a dab, on a heated surface and inhaling the resulting vapor. The practice has raised concerns because it produces extremely elevated levels of cannabinoids, an active ingredient in marijuana. Now, granted, I don't think that should be the concern. I think that the more concern, it gets into the actual concerns, but the high level of cannabinoids are probably a good thing, especially, all the research we know about the endocannabinoid system. Given the widespread legalization of marijuana in the U.S., it is imperative to study the full toxicology of its consumption to guide future policy, noted senior study author Robert Strongman, Ph.D. He's a professor of organic chemistry at Portland State University. The results of these studies have clearly indicated that dabbing, while considered a form of vaporization, may in fact deliver significant amount of toxins. Dr. Strongen and his colleagues analyzed the chemical profile of terpenes, the fragrant oils in marijuana and other plants, by vaporizing them in very much the same way that an end user would vaporize hash oil. The practice of dabbing with butane hash oil has emerged with great popularity in the states that have legalized cannabis, the authors wrote in the study. Despite their growing popularity, the degradation of product profiles from these new products have not been extensively investigated. The author continues, stating that the current study focused on the chemistry of mycene and other common terpenes found in cannabis extracts. Methacrolene, benzene, and several other products of concern to human health were formed under the conditions that simulated real-world dabbing. The terpene degradation of products observed are consistent with those reported in the atmospheric chemistry literature. Many of the terpenes that researchers discovered in vaporized hash oil are also used in e-cigarette liquids. Moreover, previous experiments done by Dr. Strongman and his colleagues found that similar toxic chemicals in e-cigarette vapor when the devices are used at high temperature settings. The dabbing experiments in the current study produced benzene. It's a known carcinogen at levels many times higher than the ambient air, the research noted. Also, it produced high levels of methacrolene, a chemical similar to acrolein, which is another carcinogen. The results of these studies clearly indicate that dabbing, although considered a form of vaporization, may in fact deliver significant amounts of toxic degradation products, the authors concluded. The difficulty users find in controlling the nail temperature puts users at a risk of exposing themselves not only to methacrolene, but also benzene. Additionally, the heavy focus on terpenes as additives seen as of late in the cannabis industry is of great concern due to the oxidative liability of these compounds when heated. This research also has significant implications for flavored e-cigarette products due to the extensive use of terpenes as flavorings. So, as you can tell, as someone who vaporizes e-juice and someone who dabs regularly, as you've seen on the show, this is something that actually is a part of a concern for me. Not because I think it's going to give me cancer or anything like that, but let's be honest. Recreational users are not the only people using these products. Medical users, people trying to fight cannabis or cancer, are taking these products. And so it would seem counterintuitive to do something that would help cause cancer. But I want to point out that the research also says that this is during high temperature dabbing, right? Or high temperature e-cigs. Now, that can be very, very different. Because for someone like me, I like taking low temperature dabs. I use an e-nail to guarantee that I'm getting these low temperature dabs, which also means that I like high terpene products, which according to the research, if I did that on a high temperature, could actually give me carcinogens that could be harmful. So, I mean, this is definitely research that I think we should know about and we should be paying attention to. And I think that we hopefully will continue doing research in it. One of the things I would really like to see the research tell us is what is considered high temperature. I mean, because I hit my dabs anywhere between 650 to 710 degrees. Is that high temperature? I don't think so, because for the most part, I notice most people like to do their dabs when the stuff's still glowing red, or I've even seen someone set my e-nail up to 900 degrees. which, yeah, you get a huge vape cloud, but I mean, I don't get any flavor. So that's just me. So remember, guys, that was from Gene News. You guys can check that out. If you just search Dr. Strogan on Facebook or on Google, I'm sure you'll be able to find this information. Please look into it. Please try to find out more about it. But moving on, this one comes from New Cannabis Ventures. This is about cannabis growth subsidiaries targeting sleep deprivation treatments, sleep disorder treatments. The Cannabis Health Innovates, or Cannabis Health, or CHI, you know how companies like to use a lot of names, the partly owned biopharmaceutical research and development subsidiary of Cannabis Growth Corporation, today announced that it has filed 9 provisional patents pertaining to the applications of cannabis and cannabinoid-based therapeutics in sleep and related nervous system disorders. The filing is part of a concentrated plan to bring patients and healthcare providers innovative medicines and health products targeting disease areas with substantial medical needs. As part of this plan, Canopy Health is collaborating with respected world-class academic researchers and clinicians and working with leading researcher organizations and regulators in jurisdictions of interest to develop and register these breakthrough products. I want to stop there just for a quick second to say, we already knew that pot helps you sleep, but anyway, you know, they gotta get their patents in. But this is a good thing for medical cannabis users, let's be honest. The cannabis industry is an industry with centuries of anecdotal evidence, but limited in deep, credible scientific research. Well, I complain about that on this show all the time. By enabling world-class research, we are confident that we can contribute to an increased understanding of cannabis as an effective and safe method of treatment and create products that will improve lives. Sleep presents a first opportunity for Canopy Health to advance in this direction, with soon more to follow. Bruce Linton, chairman and CEO of Cannabis Growth, was the one who said that. Canopy Health has filed 9 provisional patents, which is a common practice in the field of intellectual property generation and protection. Patents are first filed with the United States to create a proprietary date and allows future filings with selected jurisdictions, including Canada. Although cannabis is not presently federally legal in the United States, intellectual property generation and protection activity pertaining to cannabis and cannabinoids has dramatically accelerated over the past few years, which we've spoke about on this show before. The government was the first to have a patent on cannabinoids. In tandem with the recent provisional patents, Cannabis Health, including its wholly owned subsidiary Canopy Animal Health, has closed additional funding through sales of common shares, bringing the total funds raised to date for Canopy Health to over $15.8 million. Capital was secured through new and existing shareholders, including $4 million from Canopy Growth itself. These funds will be used to advance research and product development with the objective of ultimately bringing them to patients and healthcare providers worldwide. So, we have one article telling us that research is showing that there may be some carcinogens in dabbing. We have another one showing us that we are discovering safe and effective ways to be able to help with sleeping disorders and hopefully more mental disorders as it comes into the future. You know, I really hope this is true, and I really hope that this isn't a pharmaceutical ploy. Now, you may or may not know, I'm not necessarily a big fan of Big Farm. I really hope that these people in Canopy Health are trying to make sure that they have the end user's best interests at heart. I hope that these patents don't interfere with normal everyday medical growers. I mean, we've already run into issues where, you know, big genetic companies are trying to sue small farmers because of cross-pollination, and I really don't want to see some sort of stupid legal battle like that in the cannabis industry. So moving on to the next one here. This comes from maryjane.com, and this is about pot zero, cannabis zero carbon footprint. So basically, for the first time ever, we are having a completely zero cannabis or carbon footprint in the cannabis industry in this one particular. Cannabis legalization has transformed pot farming from a risky black market endeavor into a legitimate career choice. However, gigantic and widespread grow operations still consume a hefty amount of energy. And many have also expressed concerns that the budding industry could have a negative effect on the environment. But two Colorado ranchers named Rob and Linda Trotter have accomplished a major feat that could set a precedence in eco-conscious cannabis cultivators everywhere. The couple has launched Pot Zero, a marijuana cultivation product they claim creates zero carbon footprint, producing the most environmentally friendly and sustainably grown pot on the market. The grow operation is located in TNT Ranch outside of Gypsum, Colorado, using snow melt water that is locally sourced from a mountain that is 12,500 feet above sea level. The special water supply is called Snow to Grow. It helps helping create a clean and fertile mountain soil for the cannabis crops. The marijuana plants also receive intense ultraviolet light, while their Scottish Highland cattle herd provides another organic manure need to grow. We are very passionate about having the cleanest, greenest, and most sustainable operation in Colorado. From an energy point of view, we are sustainable. From an environmental point of view, we are sustainable, Rob Trotter said. In the past, the Trotters primarily used their ranch for cattle and hay, but soon shifted to cannabis once legalization took effect in their state. Since venturing into marijuana cultivation back in May of 2015, the ranchers have made sure that their operation is 100% sustainable, and it leaves no carbon footprint behind and utilizes zero chemicals. On top of that, the pair of growers is completely focused on producing strains with medicinal values, particularly those that treat pain and other physical conditions. I would assume that means high CBD products. Thus far, these sustainable pot crops have been used in both flower and CO2-based hash oil. Pot Zero products are available at all Root RX locations and other selected stores across Colorado. Although the clean mountain environment and loving care provided by these experienced ranchers can be very hard to replicate elsewhere, their project could potentially offer a starting point for those looking to keep their cultivation as green as possible. Now, I want to say right off the bat, I don't believe it's 100% sustainable. I don't believe anything is. Okay, but from what I read and what I read into the research before the show, I mean, it does seem like it is 99.9. It's like right there. They're using everything they can. But, I mean, if you really get into environmental sciences and you delve deep into it, you'll see that cows are not 100% environmentally sustainable. They actually produce the largest amounts of methane in our world. They're the biggest producers of methane out of all other industries, the cow industry. So I'm not putting them down, but I'm trying to say let's look at this realistically, right? So I mean, is 99% awesome? Yes, it is, and I honestly think that is the highest we'll ever get. I mean, because the conservation of energy and the laws of thermodynamics just kind of tell us that it is impossible to create a 100% energy efficient system. It just is. But I want this. I want more of this. There are grows here in the state of Washington that are reaching for this type of environmental and economic footprint, right? People like Lazy Bee Farms is one. C4 Farms is another with their outdoor. Cola Bear, which we had on the show, is another one that tries to move towards that direction. And I see it as a theme across the board. I mean, California, Washington, Colorado. People want to move towards this environmentally safe grow operation. And let's be honest, it should. I mean, hemp pulls toxics out of the soil, can actually renutrize soil that other crops have pulled all the nutrients out of. I mean, it can produce, or it absorbs more carbon per square foot than trees do, and I'm talking like redwoods, right? It's just all around a great place to be looking into. Next would be awesome is to see them let up on the regulations of hemp. So we got 11 minutes left in this show, and I'm going to try and bust through this this last article, that I have here, the one coming from Forbes. Right, I'm going to try and blow through this really quick, and then I have a very strange review to do today. So, from Forbes, this one is California Cannabis Retail's Market Reveal Big Data. right? So for 20 years, California has been allowing the legal sale of medical marijuana in an unregulated environment, but that will change as of January 2018. State and local officials are now facing the challenge of bringing in line all of the players who have operated without any rules or consequences for breaking these rules. So far this year, prices of marijuana in this state have been steadily climbing, which is great news for growers, not so much for customers. According to BDS Analytics, Californians spend most of their cannabis dollars on the traditional form of marijuana buds called flower, and flower sales account for 55% of the cannabis market in the state. That translated to $375 million in the second quarter of 2017. The BDS report said that flower is a term that is about as descriptive as wine. Just as wine can mean Serra, a Salamanta Giroux, or Port, or 1,000 of other things, flower, too, is broken down into thousands of strains. BDS also found Californians prefer indicas over sativas. 26% of Californians purchased indica flower in the second quarter of 2017, while 24% in Washington and 20% in Colorado and Oregon. Only 18% of Californians bought the more active sativa flower for the same time period, versus the 23% of those in Colorado and 20% in Washington and Oregon. Yeah, unite sativa smokers, I'm with you. The ease of the data from the California of 2016, the top flower strains actually included 3 hybrid strains, which was a combination of sativa and indica. The number 1 flower was called Gorilla Glue number 4. All right, who didn't see that coming? A hybrid followed by Jack Herrera. Love that one. One of my favorites. And the only indica strain that was on was number 3, and that was Bubba Kush, followed by Girl Scouts and Headband. Also, in California, customers spend more on marijuana the older they get. So it's actually possible that baby boomers afford higher marijuana prices. And on average, baby boomers spend about $185 a month in 2016 versus millennials that only spent $136. So there is a lot of information in this, and I got to wrap it up. But one last one. The black market that operates in the state mostly exports its crops for now. However, the report from Cannabis Benchmarks noted that illegal cannabis has been finding its way into the legal market and vice versa. The historical lack of stringent tracking and reporting in California's medical cannabis program has allowed the black market and legal market to essentially maintain an equilibrium, with supply and demand shifting between the two to maximize revenue for the sellers and minimize price for the buyers. Even more enticing for the black market to stay in business is that the 5 largest cities in the states only permitted a small number of retailers, and 2 of the 5 cities have rejected adult use marijuana completely. Without a thriving legal market, consumers will be motivated to move back down to the gray market. So stopping there, and I'll explain a little bit about why I wanted to talk about that part. First off, black market. All wrong. Black market includes violence. What we're discussing here is the gray market. And the gray market is something that is not necessarily legal, but doesn't actually have a victim. Okay, so what we're talking about is the gray market. Now, do I want to see it regulated? No. I mean, I honestly don't. But at the same time, I understand the world that we live in, and I'm a realist. So what I don't want to see in these regulations is for them to artificially drive up prices through taxation and overbearing regulations. I mean, let's be honest, the last 20 years, California has worked fine under no regulations and no rules. It wasn't until the legalization of recreational use in California was it actually put into a place where it needed to rise prices. Like you saw over the last 2 years, they've been steadily increasing in prices. So it's hard. This is where you want people like Morgan Fox from the Marijuana Policy Project to be involved, where a man who is going to actually enact intelligent policy on top of this that isn't going to hurt the consumer. The free market has spoken. We like marijuana, and we like it cheap. Stop driving the prices up, government. All right. So we're back to our review. Normally, I do a utilitarian review. But I like I said, I've been sick, and I don't want to put my, my diseases over the pipe. So I'm going to do something different today. I am going to do a drinkable. Now, granted, I'm probably not going to be able to tell you about the high, but I am going to tell you about the flavor, and it's very interesting. But first off, I do want to say that the processor is from Venspark, and the name of this is Pearl 2.0. And it's from one of my favorite producers, the actual cannabis from Knights Templar. I love their stuff, so I'm really excited to try it. Let me give you a product shot of that. So, I mean, it looks like coconut water. I'm not exactly sure how to take the look. I mean, it's like a white water. I mean, coconut milk maybe, something like that. Very interesting. So normally I would, like I said, go over the utilitarian part, but I can't do that because I'm sick. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and give this a little sip and see what we got going on here. So again, this is Pearl 2.0 vitamin water. So yeah, it does look like vitamin water. So Pearl 2.0 looks like somewhere between vitamin water and coconut water. Let's give it a taste. Okay, so honestly, it tastes horrible. I mean, it's not like disgustingly horrible. It's more vitamin water horrible. I'm not a big fan of vitamin water, but let's go ahead and, keep drinking this a little bit. And yeah, it's not horrible. It does have a weird aftertaste. It like pinches the tongue. I mean, I can't tell you about the high. I mean, what does it have in it? It's vitamin water. Do they tell me what vitamins? They don't tell me what vitamins. Ooh, but it is a 1-for-1 THC CBD. Those are my favorite, which I'm definitely going to probably enjoy the high of this because they tend to be, the ratio of 1-to-1 with the CBDs tends to be a really nice relaxive high. All right, let me finish this. Yeah, it's not something you would drink for the flavor. I want to say that like right off the bat. It's not horrible. I don't want you to take away like, oh, Robert says Pearl 2.0 is just absolutely nasty. It's not, but it's not something you drink for the flavor. But let's be honest, I drink a lot of things I don't drink for the flavor. I mean, most alcohols I don't drink for the flavor. So I should have drank this. I should have done this in the beginning, and then by the end, I could have gave you a freaking, a review on the high. But all right, let me kill it off. All right, yeah, water with a weird aftertaste. That's what it tastes like. Yeah, I can't put my finger on the flavor. It's something I'm familiar with, the taste. I just can't put my finger on it. So what's my review on this? I can't do utilitarian. I can tell you, at least from the utilitarian standpoint of it being a 1-to-1 ratio CBD, that this is most likely going to be very physically relaxive and helpful with any aches and pains that you have in your body. It would definitely be more on the medical side of things. So how would I review it? I would give it a flavor. For flavor, I'd give it like a 2 out of 5. It's not horrible. Like it didn't make me gag, but it's not something I would drink for the taste. And for the packaging, it was really neat. The fact that I like it's very simple. Pearl 2.0. I like that idea too. That's pretty nifty. The white color is a little off-putting, but hey, to each their own. So would I buy it? Probably. Actually, I'm not gonna lie. I do love drinkable 1-to-1 ratios, but I would definitely do it more like a shot. So this brings us to cached. So did we learn anything today? I like to think we did. I mean, what am I doing here if we didn't? Well, hopefully you learned that to do your own home grow, that you're going to need to make some decisions before you even start. You got to worry about your space. You got to worry about your power. You got to worry about what kind of time and effort you're going to be able to put into it. You got to know how many plants you want to grow. I mean, you got to know what size you're going to want to grow them, how long you're going to want to veg them, how long you want to bloom them. These are all things that you're going to want to do. So I really hope that, David helped you guys figure out what you want to do as far as growing is concerned. Again, you can watch that video. I'm going to be posting a whole unedited version of it on JRev Media if you want to rewatch it there and see some of the more asinine conversations we had. Please feel free to do that. So I wanted to take a moment to talk to you about JRev Media's Patreon page. If you like this content and you would like to see more exclusive content and what it looks like, we have extended interviews like the one with David that's going to be going up on Patreon. Just search JRev Media on Patreon. Because remember, without you guys, we can't make this content. So thank you for joining us. Remember, we will always be honest. We will always research the truth. Join us on Mondays and Wednesdays at noon Pacific time. And also check me out on JRev Media and help us achieve normalization through education. Thank you guys for watching, and keep growing.